I'm happy not to be among them, but yes.
Beautiful synagogue. Used to be.
With many emigres.
No, it's been there a long time. It's really close.
The one thing I want to plug. Put it out there, I'd remember. I can't go because I have Hebrew High, but Wednesday, February 22nd, which is a couple of weeks from now, the Bildner Center, Rutgers, at Rutgers, the Jewish Studies program at Rutgers runs public lectures for everyone. And 2 weeks from now, the lecture title is Temptation Transformed, How the Forbidden Fruit Became an Apple.
Oh, yeah.
They do like 4 lectures a year, and this is one of them. So that's what you do. So one of the Jewish studies professors there at Rutgers, Azan Yadin Israel, will has a book by this title, and 7:00 Wednesday the 22nd, Douglas Student Center. I went in the fall. They had a different Jewish studies lecture that was there. It's easy, parking's easy. They don't charge you at night. Yeah, Douglas. The parking's easy, traffic's easy at that time of night, blah, 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 blah. So yes, the Wednesday 22nd on that. The same program, the same lecture series in the spring, one week that I'm not here is when Robert Alter will speak. So I can't go, but you have to do a class field trip to see Robert Alter at Rutgers. That'll be in the spring, but this one's at the end of the month. Yeah, exactly. Right. That has to be, I mean, obviously he's been doing it for years, but like that has to be a thing. Like, how do you sign a book? Like, how can you not sign God? How can you resist that urge to sign the Holy One of Blessing? Right. To Steve, best wishes. God. Anyway, Rutgers Jewish Studies lecture of the fall is on how the forbidden fruit became an apple. So there we are. So that, and our bracha for Torah study is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We are going to do chapter 4 tonight. At Rutgers, it would be just a literary dive. We say the bracha to make it sacred. It's a great sequel to chapter 3. Chapter 3, of course, ends with the Adam and Chava getting kicked out of the garden for their unrestrained appetite. And here we are, chapter 4. See what happens with it. Adam yada et Chava. Through the whole thing, by the way, it says, and it's Ha-Adam, it's the human. So Adam isn't a proper name really anywhere in the Torah. It usually takes the definite article, the. So in English, we say Adam, and some translators will be like Adam as a name, but it really means the person or the human.
Is that the Hebrew?
Yeah. Yeah, the Hebrew for person is Adam, and here it's Ha-Adam. Pardon me? But she has a name. She gets a name. So Isha, woman, is what she is, or you could say that she's, Ben Adam, she's a person. But but she gets a name at the end of chapter 3, verse 20. I promise we get to chapter 4, and then we don't. It's like chutes and ladders here. The human calls woman Eve because she was the mother of all the living, right? She has a proper name. That's a name. He never gets a name. She never names him, and he never names himself. So the human had known Eve, his woman, or wife, again, same word. And she came pregnant and gave birth to Cain and said, I've created a man with Adonai, with the Lord, Yudei Vaveh. Now, again, in English, that always happens in the Torah where you get I'll name him such and such for this reason. It never makes sense as an English sentence. In Hebrew, it makes sense because the name has a link in Hebrew, right? So here, she names him, notice, by the way, she seems to be the one doing the naming. It doesn't say straight out, but she's the one who gives birth. and then says this celebratory sentence. I've created or acquired kaniti, a man, which is a weird word to use, with God. So acquired or created here, kaniti, is the same words as in kind, same letters as in kind. So it means acquired or created. And the et Elohim, et Adonai. So she's created a man with God, meaning it's sort of like this, there's a midrash that in the creation of every human being, there are three partners. There's a man, there's a woman, and there's God. Or the et could mean like God, meaning that she's like, up till now, only God created people. And guess who else can? It's me.
So she didn't create him with Adam.
Well, no, that's the known. So this is as promised,
The dirty version.
not that it's really, so this, well, it's in Florida might be dirty. Here, who knows?
Okay, but isn't Adam the human?
He's the human, yeah. So Adam and Eve, he knows her, but there are a number of different words for sex in the Torah. This is yada, know, is one which is, in English we even say, like you knew her biblically. Like this is the source of it, right? That it's yada, and it always means illicit sex, meaning as opposed to suppose they illicit sex, right? So if it's used, or if it's not illicit sex, then it's then it's being used sarcastically. So there's lots of different ways that this is done, but usually it's husband and wife, or something like approaching that when they use to know, meaning that this is an actual intimate act. Maybe like the parallel in English would be like making love, like which isn't used for drunken hookups, right? Unless you're using it sarcastically, right? Like you wouldn't, right? Like that's something else. We have lots of words for that. So you find different words. There'll be some pretty graphic ones, entered, they'll use, and that usually it's like an illicit, like it's not marriage. You wouldn't use that for a marriage, you use it for something else. There's went to bed with, and there's a few different versions. Yada, no, usually means that there's a relationship present. So that's a thing. Just like in English, what word you use for that same act says something about what's going on. Same here. So the known, he knows her. It's actually sort of sweet. Like you have this sense of like knowing.
Where it says he knew Eve as one. Like they're the only two there, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's it. You'll find this throughout the story, and I don't know what the significance is, but you'll notice that his brother, or your brother, and his wife or his woman, is always there. I don't know. It could be, it seems to be like doubling down on that, but the yada is significant. Alter has a good note. The Hebrew verb yada, knowing, suggests an intimate knowledge and hence sexual possession. It is one term for sexual intercourse associated with legitimate possession. There are others, he says, other people translate had experience of, cohabitated with, was intimate with. And sort of like there's no, as in English, there's no great term to use, so this is the one. So he knew her. She gives birth and says a celebratory thing. I've created a man with God. And she went on to give birth to his brother Abel. There's no more second-born statement than that, right? Like sort of like the firstborn gets this big like, I am creator like God. And the second-born, is she crying? Like you have this sort of like, there's no ceremony for it. Kain, kaniti, I created or I acquired. Hevel, Abel. Hevel is the same word that's in Ecclesiastes, when Ecclesiastes says vanity of vanities, all is vanity, which is really like emptiness or something that's ephemeral. That's what Abel means. So notice that she explains why Cain is named Cain. I've created a man. But Abel, there's no explanation, but the word means ephemeral. So spoiler alert, Abel's life is going to be ephemeral. It's going to be here and gone. So it could just be a little subtle joke in what otherwise is a not funny section. So,
Says vapor or puff of air.
yeah,
Like
vapor
it's
puff,
rubbing.
right, yes. It's here and it's gone, poor guy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
In here, it says Cain is
Cain, yeah.
traditional English Cain,
correct.
and then it says the name means Smith.
Right, also Smith. And so so this will be important. You'll find that we're definitely not getting there today, but his descendants will create metallurgy, meaning
Then we create everything, because everybody came from him.
no. We'll find like that, you'd think. There are more kids. There are more kids who will be announced. Right. You're right. So there'll be more kids. Seth.
No.
No, it doesn't say directly, but it implies that there are two births. Like there's a first one celebrated, and then she had Abel, and it doesn't seem like it's 20 minutes later.
Know her again.
Right, correct. It's not
Knew her
every-
once, and she
correct.
had 2 kids.
correct. So everyone, it doesn't seem to be know. The implication is two, though you don't know. It could be. Yeah.
Everyone makes a big deal.
The second one is not a thing. That's what's late, right?
Third one.
The right. So that see the one you're looking at, like, it sort of does explain, like Kaniti, I have gotten a man, as like it does sort of explain the name a little bit more. She continued bearing his brother Hevel. Now, and then their jobs, which is important. Now Hevel, Abel, became a shepherd of flocks, and Cain became a worker of the soil. So shepherd, farmer. What's the difference? Which job is harder? Farmer. What does a farmer have to do? Work the land. You got to move the rocks from the land. You got to clear the land of all the other plants. You got to plow the land. You got to plant the seeds. You have to cover them with dirt. You have to make sure that there are irrigation canals to make sure that the water gets through them. You have to hope that the rain falls. You have to wait 6 months. You got to wait for the wheat, the wheat to pop up. You have to harvest it. You have to grind the wheat into flour. You got to mix it with water or oil and make it into bread. And hope that all that works. If you're a shepherd, you know what you got to do?
Sit and wait.
You got to sit and watch the sheep.
Don't lose one.
Just don't lose one. One's a lot more chilled out than the other. One requires all this forethought and planning for something that might happen months from now. You got to defend the land against animals, against pests, against other. You assume there are other people. Like there's a lot that goes into being a farmer. Shepherds more chilled out. So Cain has totally the hard job. Doesn't say. They at least have to be young men, meaning they can't be under, say, 15, as it were. It doesn't seem to be the case, because we'll be told when he gets married, when Cain gets married, and so they're not. So the implication is that they're not. So
15's adult, but.
So what was the reason?
Yeah, meaning old enough to be doing so, but right. So let's get there. The one fact we're told is their jobs. One guy is a shepherd, and the other guy is a farmer.
Maybe that's all the shepherd could do.
Right. So the shepherd, shepherd. Yeah. So keep these things in mind for what goes on.
Okay.
Now, it was after the passing of days, verse 3, that Cain brought from the fruit of the soil a gift to Adonai. And as for Hevel, he too brought from the firstborn of his flock from the fat parts. Lord had regard for Hevel and his gift. For Cain and his gift he had no regard. Cain became exceedingly upset, and his face fell. Now, flew panav, his face fell. So notice again, there's a firstborn, secondborn thing going on. It happened after a while. Cain brought from the fruit of the soil a gift to God. So he offers a sacrifice of what he has. He's a farmer, so he brings, lettuce, wheat, something. Whatever he's growing, he brings that. And he brings it as a gift to God. Why? Yeah, it's all he could do. We don't know. God doesn't seem to ask for it. Doesn't say. That's an actual question. It doesn't. Is this an appreciation? Is it a bribe?
So did he bring the best of what he had and Cain didn't?
It,
Why did God like one?
it does,
God likes lamb chops.
it does, so it could be God likes lamb chops. It could be, the implication is that Hevel brings the firstborn, which is the prize, and Cain, it's not clear. Did he bring the good stuff? Do you
Well, he
bring the
brought-
bad
He
stuff?
brought the first, right?
Right, Hevel brings the first of his flock, and the Cain brings from the fruit of the soil. So so one does give something of prominence, and the other we don't know. Also, I mean, to the joke, like I may be a pescatarian, but the average person, which is worth more, the lamb chops or the pile of grain? Right? So one brings something that's a luxury item, and the other, not so much. Maybe about wine, right? No, Noah's going to invent wine later on. Noah's the first one to plant it, right? So that they, it doesn't say why it's brought. Hevel brought from the first. Also, think of the curse to Adam. This is another possibility why they're offering things to God. Adam was cursed that by the sweat of your brow will you get bread from the earth. It's going to be super hard. And here, by the way, notice, not so hard. We're not told that it's hard. He's sort of great. Not only is he just only able to eat by the sweat of his brow, he's like, I got enough left over. I can give some to you, God. Here you go. Like, so it could even, you could be that that's not that hard. Maybe he's just like, I'm doing fine and showing off. Who knows? God takes one, but not the other. Doesn't reject it, but seems just to like one and doesn't care one way or the other for the other. And Cain becomes upset.
So is God communicating with them?
This is the next line. The next line, God communicates. Lord says to Cain, why are you so upset? Why is your face fallen? Is it not thus? If you intend good, says, bear it aloft, it will go well by you. But if you do not intend good, at the entrance is sin. He translates a crouching demon. Towards you is his lust, but you can rule over him. Or let's see, here's the this translation is, God says to Cain, why are you upset? And why is your face fallen? Is it not that if you do well, you'll be raised? And if you don't do well, then sin crouches at the threshold, at the door, and its desire will be for you, and you'll dominate it. So this is the communication. What sort of communication is it?
Another lesson.
It's a lesson, and this is a proactive one. Notice that with Adam and Eve, it was just like, don't do this. But this is a different sort of like, it's almost like he's sitting down. I picture like God sitting down next to Cain, like and put his arm around him. All right, buddy, you got this, all right? Like, I know it's a tough time, but you can make it through. It's like that sort of talk.
But if you want to do bad, you're gonna be really good at it.
If you want to do bad, well, this is,
You can dominate evil, does that mean you can beat it?
so this is the key line. Because, well, there are a few things going on here. Does that mean you can beat it? I think it means yes. There are different ways of translating. He translates, you will dominate it, you'll beat it. And I think, and Alter says, you'll rule over it. And if you read John Steinbeck's East of Eden, the whole book hinges on this line. Like, so in East of Eden, Steinbeck, not Jewish. The whole book, it's about, early Depression era farmers in the Central Valley in California. And there's a Chinese immigrant, and his whole life's goal is to understand the Hebrew of this line, because like literally the subplot of the book is the Chinese character figuring out what does the end of verse 7 mean. Sin crouches at the door, and towards you is its desire. V'ata timshal bo. And like he learns Hebrew and all this stuff, it says ata timshal bo. Does it mean you will conquer it? Sin has a desire for you, and it's right outside the door. You will conquer it, or does it mean you can conquer it? And Rashi says it means you can conquer it. By the way, what's the difference between the two ways of reading it? Why is the can so important?
An option.
It's an option, meaning,
And you don't have to.
right, you can, or maybe you will, and then maybe you won't. Like that's the right. So Tachim Shalbo, what Alter translates as you will dominate, you will rule over it. Rashi just says, Im tirtze, if you want, you will overcome it. Tikaber alav. So the point in East of Eden is that his philosophy of humanity is going to stem from this, because classical Protestantism, Calvinism, will say that you are predestined to whatever your fate is, right? You are who you are, and your future is written, and you can't escape that. So you will dominate it, Cain, because that's who you are. But if it's you can, then that means it's up to you. You can, maybe you won't.
If Rashi interprets it one way, why do
Alter these guys. So there's a full debate on it, which is part of the joy of East of Eden. By the way, it's a long book, but it plays off as brothers fighting each other, which is of course this story. So that's part of what he's doing there. But so Alter obviously thinks it means you will dominate, you will conquer it, and Rashi and other translators will say you can.
So does that mean you dominate good?
if you dominate evil, does that mean you're good?
If that means that if I have an impulse to do evil, what he's saying here is, I know you want to hurt your brother. Control it, check it, put it into something else, right? You have the urge to do something bad, and you've got to channel that energy somewhere else. That's you can control it. You don't have to be a criminal. You can do something else. So all that energy, like go, I don't know, hack down some trees or something like that, get that out somewhere else. That's what it's saying. And you will dominate means that sort of like, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you can makes more sense because you can, but he doesn't.
It also kind of sounds like there's a lot more, I don't know, excitement or attraction to doing bad stuff.
Yes, this is maybe the realistic aspect to the tradition, right? Like
One line about if it's good,
good,
then good, bear it aloft. Otherwise, it's
Right.
like 4 lines that say
Right.
the lust of the crouching dragon.
right? It's like right there at the door, like and there is an attraction. It's like ooh, like you feel like the pull of like doing something wrong. Yeah. It's like I know the pull to do something wrong is there, but you can control it. Which is of course half of life. It's of course like whatever you feel drawn to doing that might not be the right thing, like knowing that I can control this. Yeah.
Doesn't this somewhat imply that we are fundamentally attracted to evil?
Yes. Or notice what's fascinating here is that the evil is fundamentally attracted to us. It's very curiously phrased in the opposite.
For you, is its longing?
For you is its longing. Its longing is for you. It has the desire, which is part of it's the poetic, I guess.
It's making itself attractive to you.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
humans are constantly tested by it, but is there no opinion that says by dominating evil, you will be really, really good at being evil?
no, not
If
but
you dominate
no,
good, you're really, really good at
correct. The exact opposite. That this is the trick of life, which is you have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Ra, and you've got to, good inclination, bad inclination, you've got to find a way to channel the evil inclination to serve the good, right? Like that's you may be greedy, use it to work really hard and build a business and feed your family and send them to college and what have you. It's the channeling of this thing to a good end or whatever it might be, right? Take this urge and start a family, and it's sort of so all that stuff. They read it as channeling rather than you're going to be good at being evil.
It seems to me, to be more consistent with what you've said, and I understand Christian theology is that, there's a basic. People are basically not good and you have.
Right,
to
the original
overcome it,
sin, right, yeah.
And Jesus helps you do that. Is there anything to that? Do they rely on this or is this
Well,
not really, am I reading too much into it?
No, I mean, well, that again, in East of Eden, like, that's his debate, like, which sort of like end of Christian, like, because he's asking that question from a Christian perspective, which is it that we're fundamentally bad or fundamentally good? Or is it that we have choice and that we're sort of negotiating our own fates?
But this is a common thread throughout the 5 books of Moses.
Yeah. You're right. The whole thing, I think, only makes sense if we have choice, because if you don't have choice, if it's not that I can and I might or I might not, then punishing somebody makes no sense. It makes no sense to punish somebody if they had no choice in the matter. I mean, this is sort of societal debates turn on this, right? Sort of as people choose to do things, it just goes how they're raised. It's all different versions of this conversation, right?
Yeah, but the capitalists were really big on punishment,
Yes,
but you had to do it
despite that,
because it was preordained.
correct.
So how did they
It's
justify what they are?
it's unsatisfying as a philosophy.
Yeah,
right.
well, listen.
What do you mean?
What do you
mean?
Because you didn't believe strong enough in Jesus. That's
Right.
why you're trying to preordain. You have no choice. Myron, I think part of it was they hang people. They were hung because you didn't believe strong enough in Jesus. It wasn't, that's why you were hung. It wasn't because you were a bad person. It was that you didn't think redemption when God sent his son.
They were hung like crucified because they were threat to the leadership. It had nothing to do with what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
So, all right, so now I want to zap back. So God gives the halftime speech. You can do it, kid. And it's not so successful, right? Verse 8, and Cain said to his brother Abel. Now, again, this is a gap in the Masoretic text, the official Hebrew text. It says, and Cain said to his brother Abel, Amar Cain al Hevel Chicha, and then there's nothing after that. It's like a hanging sentence. Alter includes a sentence, includes an end of the sentence, right? Alter says, and Cain said to Abel, his brother, let us go out into the field. He's taking from the Septuagint, the ancient translation of the Torah has that in there, has an end of the sentence.
His notes said.
Yeah. But but most Jewish translations will just put a ... So which is right? Was it originally there and it accidentally got dropped from the Hebrew version, or was it not there and it got added into the Greek version? We don't know.
I thought the Torah didn't change.
It doesn't change, but
We can go open it up and read it.
yeah. So in this version, it's not there. So it says Cain said, the only one version. So the ancient Greek translation made by Jews has an end of the sentence. This is one of the few spots where that happens, where there's like a clear big difference. So Cain said to his brother Abel, maybe he says, let's go out in the field. Maybe we don't know what he said. And it was while they were in the field, Cain rose up, Vayakom, Cain al Hevel, against Abel, his brother, and killed him. And Adonai said to Cain, where's Abel, your brother? By the way, what is this reminiscent of? Yeah, after the tree, like, who told you you were naked? Same strategy, same result. And he said, Lo yadati, ashomer achi anochi? I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Keeper, watchman, shomer, like the guard. Am I the guardian of my brother? And he said, what have you done? The sound, your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you're cursed from the ground that opened its mouth to take your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it won't continue to give its potency to you. You'll be a roamer and a rover on the earth. And Cain said to Adonai, my crime is greater than I can bear. Here, you've expelled me from the face of the ground today, and I'll be hidden from your presence. I'll be a roamer and a rover on the earth, and anyone who finds me will kill me. And Adonai said to him, therefore, anyone who kills Cain, he'll be avenged sevenfold. God said, and the Lord said, a sign for Cain so that anyone who finds him would not strike him. Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of roving east of Eden.
Who's gonna find him?
There are a couple of possible answers to that. So, right. So one, It's both, there's no one else there, and you have to assume that the whole world is populated, like both are going on at once. So there are two possibilities. One, just imagine how more things are going on. Two, chapter 5 will say that Adam and Eve had more kids, and they had lots of kids, and they had sons and daughters, and they had sons and daughters, and they had sons and daughters. So Cain could just be saying, oh, when there are more people around, they're gonna know that I'm a easy target.
And there's no real time to know how much many years passed when Cain said to Abel.
Right. After this, we will get a timeline. Up till now, we don't. So helpfully, in the art scroll, they have a timeline of all of these early generations from Adam to Jacob, like all the begats, and they have a little chart so that you can know who was alive when who died and all these other sorts of things. So, but it doesn't apply here because we aren't given dates. After this, we will be given dates, as it were. So this is really helpful so you can learn, see what's going on. Methuselah is the only one who dies in the flood, it seems. Like he was 968 years old and suddenly flood came, didn't make it. We don't know, but his death year corresponds to the flood year. So you can, when we get to all the begats, all the boring parts are actually there for a reason, like again, to teach you something. But yeah, so later on we'll get a timeline, but right now we don't have one.
So they could have been a couple hundred years old.
Could, right, exactly,
There could have been a couple hundred of the kids running around.
exactly. Yes, so,
Other people in his wanderings, there had to have been other people.
Well, yeah, he probably had siblings, but don't forget, it's not like he had.
he killed his brother,
Take from anybody.
right? Who the most paranoid people out there often are the ones.
Yeah.
Everybody who was there is his brother.
He's not naive. He's not naive about what people can do.
Why is nobody else mentioned?
We don't know. Again, this is a story about these guys. It's like you watch a movie and like the opening scene, you see like a couple walking out in the street of New York City, and you're meant to ignore all the other people walking on the sidewalk and the fact that there are 1,000 people living in this building. You're just following the story of these two, right? Like that's the way stories work, is that you ignore sort of everyone else. So maybe there are other people there, maybe not. I think the point of obviously like the fratricide is that
Yes. The point is that it was Adam and Eve, and they were the only,
yes,
and all of a sudden now there's 100 other similar tribes and families. And.
right. So wait, chapter 5 will deal with like how the world gets populated. But that's going to be later, but it will be a flashback to an earlier time. Because which is also the next line is Cain knew his wife. So it also, chapter 5 will sort of give a possibility for where the wife comes from.
And I asked if Cain and Abel were twins.
So we don't
So we
know.
don't know how many siblings might have passed in between. It's just that the two of them ended up.
Correct. That's the midrashic move. Like you could put other extra stuff in there because the text is so terse. We've run from the beginning to the end, amazingly. And it's 16 verses, right? Like there's not this sort of like important story is pretty quick. Cain's never mentioned again after this section. Eve is never mentioned again after this section, by the way. So he's concerned. Let's flash back to the whole killing thing. So he kills him and doesn't say why, just sort of assumes that we can figure out why, right? Like sort of jealousy, hatred, sibling rivalry, wanting to get your competitor off the scene. Also, like there's a copycat thing. If you read carefully, like it says Cain offered something to God, then Abel too did. And it's very clear that it's that's a good idea. That doesn't happen simultaneously, that it's this classic second born, like, oh, big brother's doing it. Then when the second born copies the big brother, but does better at it.
Hey, you stole my mitzvah.
So it actually hit me this morning that this sort of like brothers at each other's throats is literally what's playing out. And I don't pay too close attention, but that essentially seems to be the William and Harry thing, right? Like where one is like essentially like trying to take out the like one accuses the other of essentially you don't care about my existence or you disdain my existence, and then is taking a shot, essentially trying to take out his job. Like it's really amazing. This sort of it feels Cain and Abel-y the way these two guys are in the public eye.
Mhm.
Really in this almost battle to the death. Oof. Yeah.
Well, very much, because one of them seems to be in good favor of his father,
Yes.
and the other one not so much.
It's definitely not so much. It's totally amazing.
You think of, in many ways, you were the closest biologically to your siblings. And for many people, siblings, the closest person they have.
Of course.
None of that plays out here at all.
That and it's not presumably it's not accidental. They could have said, and there were 20 generations, then two guys got into a fight. But it's Dafka not doing that, right? It's saying, no, brothers, and this darkness lurks in all of us. None of these guys would be, I feel like the people hearing the story, writing the story would not be surprised at sort of people doing terrible things. They say this lurks in all of us, and it lurks and no one is safe, even your brother.
So it's really emphasizing that darkness.
That's what it seems to be, right? Like sort of like that this is in us, and the whole rest of
And we all have the choice.
and you all have the choice. And he asked the question, am I my brother's keeper? And no one answers it, but the answer is yes. In fact, you are responsible for what happens to other people. And the whole rest of the book is like, you guys, you're responsible for each other, care for each other. This is the essence of what it's all about. So that seems to be that. And it's such am I my brother's keeper? I don't know.
That's rude.
It's really amazing. It's such an incredible line. I don't know. But it's not answered. This is just like, again, note Adam and Eve make him eat the tree. They've been told not to eat the tree. Has Cain been told not to kill people? No. He's supposed to know it. It's natural law. Natural law. You're supposed to have.
Whoops, I didn't know I couldn't do that.
Yep. God's not buying it, right? You're supposed to know not to kill somebody. This is supposed to be in you. And notice how he's held responsible for it, even though there was no command. That is base human morality.
And yet, several thousand years later, he feels the need to make it a law.
Write it down, yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. Well, this seems to be there's going to be a key moment where God seems to say, all right, we need to do a reset here, because what I assumed that they're not going to murder each other, and that's just a base thing, isn't in fact.
Yeah. You're right.
In that.
It seems like it's such a base thing. You should know it, but obviously not everyone does. So God says, let me emphasize this thing. Let me lay these things out there.
Right.
Make it as clear as mud.
Right. That is this week's Torah portion. Is the 10th commandment, Saturday morning. So that like, notice he's just supposed to know it. And by the way, if in fact the Septuagint line is correct, and Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out into the field, then that implies what? Premeditation.
The other line ends with the ...
Right there. And Cain said to his brother Abel, ... And it wasn't while they were in the field, and Cain was so just ... So it's not there. That, by the way, that's again a midrashic opening. You can put any sentence you want there.
In the Torah, is there like?
No, there's not. No, there's no dot. It just says, it just says, and Cain said to his brother Abel, and it was when they were in the field.
He said something to his brother when they were in the field. Or let's go to the field.
that you have to insert it.
In the field.
Right, you have to insert it there. Grammatically, something is missing. So like, yeah, so it's not, well, yeah, so, right, so it just seems to be a lacune in the text. So he says something, they go in the field, it seems that it's premeditated, and if it's in the field, there's also the implication, maybe he's trying to hide. Because clearly, Cain doesn't think, like Adam and Eve don't think that God is all-seeing and all-knowing, that's why they're hiding in the bushes. Cain thinks that he can get away with it, right? Because God says, where's Abel, your brother? Hevel achicha. And he says, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? You think I'm supposed to be keeping tabs on him? What do I look like? So that, trying to get away with it, he really tries to get away with it and lies. And he clearly doesn't think God knows. Meaning that if I took him in the field and presumably like sort of like put some dirt over him or buried him or something like that, tried to hide my tracks, it'll be fine.
And presumably Cain would know the field better than Abel, he's a farmer.
He's the farmer. And he said, so God says, what have you done? Ma'asita, which again is a exclamation, right? God presumably knows this is truly like a, what have you done? There are different ways of translating this. I sort of like the sound, your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Like there's a sense that God is taken back in real offense, that there's something like deeply disturbing to God about this, that the blood cries out to God from the ground and it can be heard, as it were. And the Hebrew is plural, damei achicha, the bloods of your brother. Rashi says it's bloods of your brother because it's your brother you killed and anyone who would come from him, all of his descendants, you've taken their lives too. So it's the bloods of your brother, like really, it's really intense. And now you're cursed from the ground that opened its mouth to take your brother's blood from your hand. And this is, why does the ground, he's cursed from the ground.
Because we relied on it.
Relied on the ground. The blood like soaks into the ground. And again, if you buried him, like sort of like you made the ground like a co-conspirator in your crime. And so now it's not cooperating with you anymore because you did this and you sort of like implicated yourself in this. It implicated the ground in it. The ground that opened its mouth to take your brother's blood from your hand. It's really a graphic image. And there's a sense of that the world is out of bounds. The punishment is because like the karma of the world is out because a crime has been done. Something needs to be evened out. So when you work the ground, it won't continue to give you its potency to you. You'll be a roamer and rover on the earth. Nav and nad, it's the Hebrew. And Cain says to God, now this is amazing because Adam and Eve, once they were punished, they took their punishment. Cain appeals. He's like, too much. You can't punish me like this. It's too much. This isn't fair. So one, it's amazing that he thinks to do it. Having literally bloods on his hands. He did something a lot worse than his parents did. They ate an apple. Whatever it was. Fig. And he's like literally covered in blood. And just lied about doing it. He's like, can you reconsider the sentence? And even more amazing, God's like, you're right. Maybe I was too harsh.
So why would he protect him? And what happened to an eye for an eye?
Well, eye for an eye isn't there yet. So here now there will be before long capital punishment, right? There will be capital punishment event later in the Torah. Here, he doesn't, even though, I mean, that's a possibility, right?
But he protects him.
Not only that, but he protects him, right? Exactly.
He doesn't trust mankind to do the right thing. He tells mankind if you're violent against this man, you're in trouble.
Right. So that if I'm set like, and because, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's really consistent with, I don't know if it's something you've just heard, but that old line, an eye for an eye, the whole world ended blind,
Right.
which doesn't accomplish anything. And is that what God is trying to say, that, you really don't take one life for another?
No, so I mean, so I think not that, meaning that one, like the way the rabbis understand an eye for an eye is that it means a fair punishment, right? That you don't take a life for an eye. That you don't, you don't take vengeance plus, that the punishment has to fit the crime. So one is that. But it is curious that God doesn't give the death penalty, though, spoiler alert, before long, God's gonna kill everybody except one family. Like, again, it's a children's story with animals, but everyone's gonna get killed. Very bad.
But still, God protects this guy.
He does, protects him. Specifically, and when he wasn't going to.
When he already knows that human beings apparently have the ability to kill,
Mhm,
so he bans him to walk the earth
mhm.
or the community or wherever.
Right, so walking, right, you're just gonna wander the earth,
One
you'll,
of his siblings is no doubt gonna bump him off.
right, because he's an easy mark. Right, because, if I'm home, I can protect, I can build relationships, I can have protection, but if I'm, you're vulnerable when you're traveling, right, more than when you're at home, right?
Rabbi,
Yeah,
hi there, from the netherworld here. But yet, he protects him. He has a reason for protecting him. Because in the later verses, Cain marries a woman and he has all this progeny that help populate the earth and became a successful builder of cities. So if he's knowing all and God is knowing all, he knows in the future maybe that there's the potential, and that's why you don't kill him.
so it could be that, it could be the sense that that there's a,
Any chance that God thought that death would be too easy and out, and that
Is-
his punishment should be to wander for as long as
So
he can?
it could be, given the long lifespan, it's not like it's, it could be that, the Rashi et al. Read the verse differently than the way we're reading it in order to make it make more sense, which is to say, my iniquity is too great to be borne, or some translate, my punishment is too great to bear. And if it's my punishment is too great to bear, then he's just saying, you're being too hard on me. I only killed a guy. But my iniquity is too great to bear, or Alter translates, my crime is greater than I can bear, or Rashi says it should be read as a question. Is my sin too great to bear? Question mark. Those are all versions of, I did something that was wrong. If Rashi puts a question mark, says it should be read as a question, that is my crime too great to bear? Meaning that could I even survive with this level of guilt? I now realize that what I did was so terrible. Like, can I even, will I even be able to survive with this level of guilt on me? I'm so sorry that I did it. And that it's in realm of his saying, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how terrible the thing I did, that God's response then becomes, okay, you said you're sorry, we'll walk this back a little bit.
So this is the first argument against the death penalty, thinking that people can actually change.
Or either that they can actually change, or it's a first, well, he doesn't get the death penalty anyway. It's the first argument for Rashi turns it into the first repentance, that he says, whereas Adam and Eve just did it and they're done. Here, after the first lie, he's reading it as, my crime is too great to bear. I did wrong. You're right. I did wrong. I throw myself at the mercy of the court instead of the way you could read it, that he never repents, but Rashi reads it that he's sorry, and that's why God walks it back.
I think David asked really the fundamental question here. What is this trying to say? What is God? Is it saying that, he suffered enough? Or that what's the message here?
So if it's, again, Rashi's lesson is the importance of repenting. You can read it, I feel like I don't know if the basic sense is that he repents though. So Rashi reads it that he is, well, he says that when he says isn't my crime too great to bear? Is like a way of saying like, I've done something so terrible, like, can anyone live with this level of guilt knowing it? And that's he's admitted guilt. I mean, of course, he's just been presented with all the evidence, but then he's admitting guilt, and that's a version of repenting. I don't know if like that's the basic sense of like what's really going on, but
Are there other views other than Rocky? I'm curious if the questions come up.
This one says my punishment is too great to bear, which means not the crime,
Correct.
but what God told him was going to be his punishment was too much for what he did.
that's the whiny kid version.
Yeah.
That's the whiny kid version. He says my crime is too great to bear, in which case it's like, oh yeah, I admit I was wrong. But the punishment is too much, but I was wrong, I admit it.
Or if you interpret the punishment, I have to live with this. I'm gonna be suffering from this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, so
Well, he
it's,
killed someone. He should.
he killed someone. It's the crime,
His brother.
right? It's the,
Here, in many states, there is no death penalty.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, how many times have you heard, well, people will say, I don't want a life sentence, execute me.
correct. So I today, now that the kids are out of the house, the older kids, I have a little bit more time, so I got an email of, is anyone, to rabbis in the area, is anyone willing to pastorally visit the inmates at Edna Mahan prison?
Where is that?
That's
It's in Clinton,
Oh, is that the women's prison?
the women's prison in Clinton, the only women's prison in the state, and the worst of the worst, right?
Can you go? I'll go with you.
I went today. So the story is I'm saying this because I went today. I went through the whole
Oh,
process
Nice.
for this reason, that it's
Are you going back?
Did they want me to do?
I just
Pray with them.
I just talked Torah and talked like, I'm not,
Did they listen?
Yeah. no, a few inmates. I say it in that the one prison, it's so terrible. Like,
Is this a maximum security prison?
I was in one of the maximum blocks, though it was in like the public room of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously but I do this partly because I deal with like nice middle class people in Bridgewater, right? Right, sort of like, this is like the bottom, obviously the bottom of the bottom of the bottom.
This is you being the wanderer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get to leave, but just, oh God, the amount of the razor wire and the buzzing in, the buzzing out, and the
Doors.
and the leave it, right, and obviously no smartwatches, no phones, no nothing, no metal, anything,
It's over the inmate though.
it's a,
Earlier in my career, I did public defender work. And I will tell you, that was the worst, but I was trying to say it was probably the worst, but that was close second.
well, this, I mean, you see in the papers like this, they've had significant sexual abuse scandals there.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but the inmates would really try to seduce you if you were a man. That happened all the time.
I had to go through this whole training of reveal nothing. There's no psychological trick that won't be used, and you must reveal nothing.
Did they teach you?
Yeah, no, it's back and forth, but I try to assure back casual, but guarded because this reveal nothing. Right. But also how the whole point of talking to people is that you sort of that there's some exchange,
Action.
right? But it's hard. And I'm totally over my head.
You're going to bring it into this discussion. I'm sorry, we may have interrupted.
No, so that's what I thought when you said there are people who are I would rather just die than be in prison. I understand.
But there are countries that have capital punishment and they're murder rates are substantially up here.
Right, well, right, so what drives the American murder rate may be based on a number of different things, right? There's an availability of murder weapons. Yeah, so yeah, God, so death penalty won't be controversial in the Jewish tradition biblically, meaning it's coming. And there are a number of things for which the Torah will tell you to have the death penalty for, including all the 10 commandments are thought to be capital crimes. The punishment for adultery, for instance, the punishment for adultery is death for both individuals. Well, that's right. Yeah, then that's why the rabbis read don't steal as kidnapping, because kidnapping has a death penalty and don't steal elsewhere. So like this must be the one with a capital punishment. So, breaking Shabbat, that's explicit in the Torah, right? Like breaking Shabbat is a capital crime. So they're not, it's not soft on it, but also it's a, right, the example in the Torah, that merits a death penalty, remember this one? Gathering sticks. Yes, gathering sticks is what for a fire, right? That's the example. It's not like some, right? Pardon me?
Cutting the grass sometimes.
Right, that's right. So be careful. We have a service here. It's part of the synagogue contract, right? Right, but no, so he does let him off the hook. It seems, again, there's the actual serious part is that God is portrayed as having an attribute of justice. You're getting punished for what you did, and the punishment will fit the crime, and an attribute of mercy. I'm going to not treat you the way you deserve, but with more love than that. The same way that we treat the people who are significant to us in their lives. When they anger us, we may get mad at them and think you deserve X, but eventually we think, oh, because I love you, I'm going to walk this back a bit. And if somebody at work calls me name X, I might want to cut off that relationship. But if my wife calls me name X, I'm going to be bound to figure out why she said this and be like, well, it is because we have a relationship. Same thing with children and parents and children, right? Your kids might call you something, but you're going to figure out a way to forgive. So there's justice and there's mercy. This seems to be first justice, then mercy. And we'll see what becomes of Cain. But yeah, we finished that part of the story. After this, it gets into the line of Cain and what happens to his descendants.
There's not much about Cain after this chapter.
There is zero. He is not mentioned after this chapter. Eve is not mentioned after this chapter either. No. There will be another child. Adam and Eve will conceive and bear Seth.
Remember, God has to reset on it.
Yes.
Well, not only that, but you don't find too many kids between Cain and Abel.
Right.
Correct. But yeah, so right, everyone is descendant of Noah, right? So the Hebrew word, he'll be chapter 6. The Hebrew word for everybody is Ben Adam, the son of Adam, right? So the children of Adam, everybody is right, correct, right. So Ben Adam is the term for people. Anyway, yeah. Ad Khan. We'll do this again. You're welcome.
So growing up in Brandon, his father was a rabbi.
Very nice of you.